The phone buzzes on the kitchen counter. It's just a notification from the bank, a routine monthly statement. But for a moment, his hand freezes above the screen. The breath catches just slightly in his chest. He doesn't open it. Instead, he puts the phone down and walks to the sink, turning on the tap to wash a single coffee cup. The water is warm. He can feel the steam on his skin, but his mind has already left the kitchen. It starts with a number that isn't real, pulled from nowhere. Let's say $3,000, an unexpected bill, a medical thing, or the car, finally giving out. The number sits in his head, heavy and solid. Then, the movie begins. He sees the bank account balance dropping. He feels the scramble for extra work, the late nights at the computer, the tired eyes. He hears the difficult conversation with his partner, the tight silence that would follow, the imagined shame of having to ask family for help. The mental camera pans to a future, months from now, of eating cheap meals alone at a dim kitchen table, the weight of failure in his shoulders. All of this, in the 20 seconds it takes to dry the coffee cup. He finally opens the app. The balance is normal. Everything is fine. There is no $3,000 problem. There is just Tuesday. But the feeling remains. A low hum of dread, now attached to nothing. The rest of the morning feels thinner, like he's watching it through a fog. He checks his email 3 times in an hour, his body still braced for bad news that never comes. This is a pattern. It doesn't need a bank notification. It can be a news headline about the economy, a friend mentioning a job loss, seeing a for sale sign in a neighbor's yard. The mind uses anything as a key to unlock this same internal room, a room where potential disasters are kept, neatly arranged, and rehearsed over and over. If you've ever finished a long day, finally sat down, and then been flooded with thoughts of, what if I lose it all? You're not alone. This video might put words to that quiet habit. If it resonates, consider subscribing. Maybe share in the comments if you've ever had a bank notification moment of your own. For this person, it's a familiar ritual. He's been in this mental room many times. The scenery of the catastrophe changes. Sometimes it's debt, sometimes it's job loss, sometimes it's a humiliating public failure. But the emotional weather inside is always the same. A cold, focused anxiety. He doesn't do it because he wants to. He does it because, in a strange way, it feels necessary. It feels like work. Like if he stops rehearsing the disaster, he'll be caught off guard. The vigilance itself is the point. The psychologist would call this catastrophizing. But that's just a label. The real question is, what is this meticulous, exhausting rehearsal for? Why would a mind choose to spend its energy living through imaginary losses? The answer isn't about money. It's about control, and an attempt, however flawed, to feel safe. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff you've visited many times before. You know the drop. You've memorized the feeling of the wind pulling at you. You've played the fall in your head, frame by frame. This is what the mental rehearsal is, a practiced fall. For him, it follows a script. First the trigger, the missed call from work, the odd email subject line, then the immediate leap to the worst possible financial outcome. Not a small setback, but total ruin. His mind doesn't bother with intermediate steps. It goes straight to the end scene. Eviction, bankruptcy, standing in a line for help. He feels his throat tighten. His shoulders hunch forward, as if under a physical weight. He might sit perfectly still at his desk, but inside, he's already fighting the disaster. Arguing with landlords, pleading with bankers, selling possessions. The rehearsal is vivid. It has sensory details. The smell of a musty, temporary apartment. The gritty feel of a bus seat during a long commute to a terrible job. The taste of cheap, stale bread. This isn't daydreaming. Daydreams are often pleasant escapes. This is the opposite. It's a deliberate immersion in suffering that hasn't happened. And when the rehearsal ends, when he finally shakes his head and comes back to the present, there's a bizarre sense of relief, a hollow calm. Why? Because for those few minutes, the unpredictable future felt predictable. Chaotic life felt contained inside a story he wrote. He knew the beginning, the middle, and the tragic end. There were no surprises. In a world that feels financially unstable, this mental habit creates a terrible kind of stability. It trades the anxiety of the unknown for the exhaustion of the imagined known. He confuses this exhaustion for preparedness. If I've already lived through it in my head, the logic goes, I'll be ready when it happens for real. It feels like being a responsible soldier, checking his weapons before a battle. But the battle is almost always a fiction. The weapons are never used. The energy is spent on a ghost. The cost is paid in the present moment. He's at dinner with friends, laughing, But a part of his mind is in that future apartment, counting imaginary pennies. He receives a bonus at work, and for a brief moment, he feels a spike of joy. Then, the mental accountant immediately deducts it for a future crisis. The good news is neutralized, pre-spent on a problem that doesn't exist. The body keeps the score. The constant low-grade alert releases stress chemicals. Muscles stay tense. Sleep is lighter. The mind, so focused on simulating future survival, drains the energy needed for present-day life. It's a tax paid in advance, for a debt that may never come due. The function is clear now. It's not about finance, it's about emotion. The rehearsal is a shield, a preemptive strike against shock, against helplessness. By imagining the worst, the mind tries to inoculate the heart against the pain of surprise. It's a flawed, costly strategy. But to the part of him that's scared, it makes perfect sense. It feels like the only way to navigate a world that once taught him, in some deep place, that safety is an illusion. To understand the rehearsal, you have to look at where the script was written. It wasn't born in the present. It was copied, word for word, feeling for feeling, from an older time. For him, it might have been childhood, not necessarily poverty, but unpredictability. The tense silence after a parent lost a job, the overheard hushed arguments about money behind a closed door, the sudden cancellation of a promised trip because things are tight, the feeling of the house holding its breath, waiting for the next piece of bad financial news. Or maybe it was later. His first real financial shock as a young adult, a betrayal by a business partner, a sudden layoff that left him scrambling for months, a moment of public shame when a card was declined, a single, searing experience where money equaled danger, and the lack of it meant vulnerability and exposure. That experience left a mark, not on his resume, but on his nervous system. It taught him a core lesson. The floor can disappear at any moment. Security is not something you have. It's something you must constantly earn and vigilantly protect. And the primary tool for protection is anticipation. If you can see the blow coming, you can brace for it. The imagination becomes a radar, constantly scanning the horizon for threats. So, the man at the kitchen sink isn't just worrying about a bank statement. He is, in that moment, 8 years old again, listening to the worried voices downstairs. He is 22 again, holding a termination letter. The present trigger is just a doorway back to that old, familiar feeling of instability. The financial catastrophe he imagines is just the current costume worn by an ancient fear. This is why logic doesn't stop it. Telling himself, "You're fine, your accounts are healthy," doesn't reach the part that learned the old lesson. That part speaks the language of emotion and memory. It doesn't care about spreadsheets. It cares about survival. It would rather have him suffer 1,000 imaginary tragedies than be blindsided by one real one ever again. The pattern is an adaptation. It's the mind's attempt to solve a problem from the past by over-applying a strategy in the present. It's like someone who once survived a fire becoming obsessed with checking smoke alarms every hour. The behavior seems extreme in a safe house, but it makes perfect sense in the context of the burned-down home they carry inside them. He carries that home inside him. The mental rehearsals are him constantly checking the walls for heat, smelling the air for smoke. The financial world is just the most recent landscape where this old fire fear plays out. The vigilance is never about the money itself. It's about what money represented in that formative moment. Safety, love, stability, choice. The loss of it meant the loss of all those things. So the rehearsal is, at its heart, a grief ritual, a preparation for a loss he is terrified of reliving. He is trying to mourn in advance, to pay the pain up front, so that if the loss comes again, it won't destroy him. He is trying to control the uncontrollable by feeling all the sadness now. It's a heartbreaking strategy, and it explains the deep fatigue that follows these episodes. He isn't just thinking, he is emotionally grieving ghosts. The rehearsal has a fee. It's withdrawn not from a bank account, but from life itself. It's a tax on peace, paid in the currency of presence. He goes for a walk in the park. The sun is out. The path is lined with green trees, but his mind is elsewhere. It's in a future committee meeting where his project is criticized. It's calculating how that criticism could lead to a poor review, which could lead to a frozen salary, which could lead to falling behind on mortgage payments. A chain of imaginary cause and effect, unfolding with each step he takes. He misses the smell of the cut grass. He doesn't see the way the light filters through the leaves. He is a ghost in his own life, haunting a future that doesn't exist. This is the silent cost, the contamination of the present. Good moments are shadowed by preemptive loss. A quiet Saturday morning is invaded by Monday's potential disasters. The mind becomes a prison warden, and the sentence is constant vigilance. Even when things are objectively stable, the job is secure, the bills are paid, the internal alarm system is never disarmed. Stability feels like a trick, a calm before a storm he is sure is coming. The body lives in this state of low-grade emergency. The jaw is perpetually tight. The shoulders are rarely relaxed. Sleep is a shallow pool, easily disturbed by a stray worry. He is tired by noon, not from physical labor, but from the emotional labor of managing simulations. His energy, his focus, his capacity for joy are all siphoned off to fund a mental theater of crisis. There's another cost. The relationship with money itself becomes distorted. Money is no longer just a tool for living. It becomes the main character in a never-ending drama of survival. Every financial decision, no matter how small, is weighed against a backdrop of potential catastrophe. Saving money feels less like prudence and more like a desperate hoarding against famine. Spending money, even on necessities, can trigger a wave of guilt and fear. Money is transformed from a neutral resource into a source of perpetual anxiety. He might achieve financial goals, a savings target, a paid-off car, but the mental victory is brief. The goalpost immediately moves. The old fear whispers, "This isn't enough. You need more. What about the next crisis?" There is no finish line. No amount of money ever purchases the feeling of enough that the old lesson stole from him. The cruel irony is that the habit designed to create safety actually erodes it. It steals the safety of a peaceful morning, the safety of a deep breath, the safety of being fully inside a good moment without a mental footnote warning of its inevitable end. He is trying to build a fortress against financial tragedy, but he's using the bricks of his own present well-being to construct it. The walls get higher, but the room inside gets darker, smaller, and lonelier. The pattern, for all its intention of control, ends up controlling him. It dictates his mood, his energy, his attention. It tells him what to fear and when to brace himself. The attempt to predict the future becomes a prison in the present. And the warden is a younger version of himself, still trying to solve an old problem, still trying to feel safe in a world that once felt so dangerously unpredictable. The phone buzzes again, days later. Same kitchen counter, same time of day. The notification lights up the screen. He sees it. The old reflex activates. The quick catch of breath, the tension in the hand. The doorway to the rehearsal room swings open, but this time, he pauses. He doesn't walk through it immediately. He just stands there, recognizing the doorway for what it is. Not a prophecy, not a useful warning, just a habit. A very old, very tired habit born from a real hurt a long time ago. He picks up the phone. He opens the notification. It's just a statement. The numbers are ordinary. He puts the phone down. The movie doesn't start. Instead, he feels the cool surface of the counter under his palms. He hears the hum of the refrigerator. He sees the way the afternoon sun makes a rectangle of light on the floor. He is here, in Tuesday, in a kitchen that is quiet and stable and safe. This is not about stopping the thoughts. They might come. The old radar will still ping. It's about changing the response. It's about noticing the trigger and saying silently to that part of the mind, "I see you. You're scanning for danger. Thank you for trying to protect me. But we are okay right now." It's about separating the memory of past instability from the reality of the present moment. The real safety isn't found in the exhaustive rehearsal of disaster. That only practices feeling unsafe. Real safety is built in the small, quiet returns to the present, in feeling the solid ground under your feet when the ground is, in fact, solid, in trusting a moment of peace without immediately mortgaging it to a fearful future. It begins with compassion. For the younger self who learned that lesson of vigilance, that self wasn't wrong, it was adapting, it was surviving. The goal isn't to attack that part, but to gently inform it that its intense services are not always required anymore. That the adult here now has other tools. Planning, yes. Prudence, of course, but not perpetual pre-grieving. The relationship with money can slowly soften, from being a protagonist in a tragedy to being a tool in a life. A savings account can become about a future possibility, not just a bunker against catastrophe. A purchase can be just a purchase, not a moral test. This shift is subtle. It's not a loud declaration, it's a series of quiet returns, noticing when the mind slips away to its rehearsal room and gently guiding attention back to the breath, back to the sensation of the chair, back to the actual conversation you're having. Each return is a brick in a different kind of fortress, one built not on fear of the future, but on presence in the now. It ends with a simple, profound recognition that a mind which constantly imagines financial tragedies is not a broken mind. It is a vigilant mind, a protective mind. It is trying, in its own misguided way, to create safety through anticipation. Understanding that is the first step toward finding a safety that doesn't cost you your peace. If this perspective on vigilance and fear resonates with you, we create more content exploring these quiet psychological patterns. Subscribing helps you find them, and turning on notifications means you won't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.